So this week we're going to start speaking about Pesach and the Haggadah Shel Pesach, Seder Shel Pesach, the mitzvah of Karban Pesach that we don't have anymore in the Zman of the Churban Beis HaMikdash. We don't have the Karban Pesach, but we have on the Seder plate a shank bone to remind us of the Karban Pesach. And in connection with what we learned about this past week, Parshas Para, the Para Aduma was used to purify anyone who was Tamei Meis, who contracted an impurity from coming in contact with a dead person, so they couldn't bring the Karban Pesach. So as a prerequisite to be able to experience the Karban Pesach, they had to have a Para Aduma, and that's why we learn about the Para Aduma before Pesach comes. Okay. And we're going to see that there's more of a connection than that, than it's just a Heicha Timtza. There's something that is a prerequisite that enables a person to become pure and then bring the Karban Pesach. It's a deeper connection than that. What I'm going to speak about today is from the Beis HaLevi. And the Beis HaLevi is in Parshas Bo. And I assume that this is a drasha that he gave by Shabbos HaGadol, or right before Pesach. It was just put into the parsha here in Parshas Bo because that's the parshas that speak about Pesach. So the pasuk says, it's very interesting if you look at the sequence of the parshas in Parshas Bo, but the pasuk says, Parak, okay. The pasuk says, Parak Yud Beis, pasuk Mem Gimel. It's actually, Rashi says, this parsha was told to the Bnei Israel the day of Yud Dalid. It means the 14th day of Nisan. That was the day that they brought the Karban Pesach, and they left. That was that night was Makas Bechoros, and they left the next day. So, and it's not the first time they learned about the Karban Pesach, but here the Torah starts it again. This is the laws of the Pesach, Karban Pesach. Kol ben nechar lo yochal bai. Anyone who's a ben nechar lo yochal bai. What does ben nechar mean? Targum translates the yishtamad. Kol bar Yisrael the yishtamad. Maybe we're familiar with the word mishumad. Rashi explains, based on Chazal, who is this person who cannot eat the Karban Pesach? Kol ben nechar lo yochal bai. So Rashi says, "Shenisnakru ma'asav la'aviv shebashamayim." Somebody, Nachri means a Gentile. You don't really translate a Gentile. Somebody whose actions have drawn him away from his Father in heaven. Nisnachru ma'asav. It becomes estranged through his actions to his Father in heaven. And Rashi says, not only as a Jew who has gone astray, but also a non-Jew is also not allowed to eat from the Karban Pesach. Echad Nachri v'echad Yisrael Meshumid b'mashma. Okay, so the first question that the Beis HaLevi asks here.
The first question that I have is why would somebody who strayed away would actually participate in the action of Karban Pesach?
Why would he want to?
Obviously.
Right. Maybe he wants to still
barbecue.
Well, no.
Okay.
Hey, look, it's a good meal.
Because if we say he strayed away, then he's not part of us. He wouldn't want to participate. If he, on the other hand, if we say that he was and now he wants to come back, we welcome. A Jew is always welcome back to the fold, so to speak.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, it seems to me. Let me just say the question of Beis HaLevi, and we'll go out of order here, because... yes. You have a question too?
No.
Oh. But it's related to your questions, and that is, why can't he eat from the Karban Pesach? There are other mitzvahs that if he wants to perform, he's allowed to perform the other mitzvahs, and why not the Karban Pesach? And why is that... like the first thing that is the Torah tells us about, the Torah goes on and says that other laws of the Korban Pesach, not to break the bone, and where to eat it. Okay, so when a person converts to Judaism, he's also equal and supposed to be participating in the Korban Pesach. The first thing it starts with is this. These are the laws of the Pesach. Kol ben nechar lo yochel. Okay. Now, like I said, I'm going to go a little bit out of order, so if I don't get back to something, then you tell me. I didn't make photocopies this morning. Part of it is because it's such a big piece, and even though I've spent already a long time looking through it, I still needed to go through it more and more until it was time to give the share. So, and it says several pages, so I don't know what we would have photocopied anyway if we were just focused on one piece. Now, listen to this part. It's towards the end. Imagine this. I guess. Imagine. So there's a Pesach Seder, and there's somebody leading, a father leading the Seder, and he has his children at the Seder, and he also has his Ben Rasha, we'll call him, who's at the Seder. He's Nisnachu Maisa Miyavish Bashamayim. He knows all about the story of Exodus. He knows that God gave us the Torah, and we're not coming to judge anyone in our generation, but he fits into this category of Kol Ben Nechar. It's not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach, but it's only the Korban Pesach. So he came to the Seder, and let me see if I can find this.
He's the second son.
The Chacham and the Rasha. In the context that the Beis Levi is talking over here, he is, yes. He's putting it together. So, he comes to the Seder, and there's 4 sons in the Seder. One of them is the Ben Rasha. So he comes, and he's sitting with the other children, and he's filled with minos. Minos is heresy. In other words, he doesn't believe in God running the world, or in God creating the world, or in God communicating to us, and that he has to live his life according to God's words. He doesn't care about that. He's going to do what he wants. He'll believe what he wants. So, but he's still one of the children, and they're all sitting by the table, and his father gives out. Everyone gets 4 cups of wine. So this boy also gets 4 cups of wine. He gets matzah. He gets maror. Because the Beis Levi brings that the Gemara Pesachim darshans that this Kol Ben Nechar Lo Yochel only goes on the Korban Pesach, so it doesn't go on the other mitzvahs. It says Bo Lo Yochel in the Pesach he can't eat the Pesach offering. Aval Ochelu b'matzah or maror. He can eat in the matzah. He can eat in the maror. He can have the 4 cups, right? But then it comes to the end of the Seder. At the end of the Seder, what do they have? What's nechal sova eaten when a person's not anymore hungry, still has an appetite. We save a little bit of an appetite, but we already ate the meal. That's time for the Korban Pesach. Okay, nechal sova. They didn't eat the Korban Pesach yet. Until now, this boy has been included in the Pesach Seder. He's had the matzah, he had the maror, he's had the 4 cups. Okay, he got to eat from the meal, and now it's time to eat the Pesach. And he gives everyone a part from the meat of the Pesach. Like you said, it's good barbecue. Okay, it's actually roasted, right? And if you want to see what it looks like, you go to David Choose and you see the spit over there. You just put the Korban Pesach on. The whole thing fits on, except it can't be made out of metal because the metal itself cooks the meat. It has to be on a wooden stick that it's only the fire.
Vertical. It's vertical. It's not horizontal. It's vertical.
But where by the Pesach?
Yeah, because it's actually interesting. In the kashrus, whenever they talk about spits, they're always talking about vertical.
So it could drip out. Okay.
How would he heat it? You'd have to have the...
It could even be on a tilt. It doesn't have to be that only specifically.
It's not a horizontal spit the way we're used to.
It's a shawarma.
Yeah, but there you've got the source of heat behind
It's still
it.
on the bottom.
It's not going to cook all the way through.
Got the bottom
I don't know how they did it. That's what they said.
Okay, so when it comes to that point, the Rasha gets skipped over, and he doesn't give him. Why doesn't the father give him? Because the Torah says not to give him from the Korban Pesach. Now, this Rasha is livid. He is angry. Why are you skipping me? I also left Egypt. In other words, my forefathers also left Egypt. And I also have this as part of my history. Why don't you include me? Aren't I also part of the Jewish people? And now you're distancing me. This is what the question is. So I'm not going to say the answer yet, because we're going to go through a little bit more from the Beis Halevi to get there. But so that just intensifies the question. Beis Halevi begins with is why not? Why can't he eat from the Korban Pesach? Why specifically this? Why is it this?
So this means at the table of the Beis Halevi that he would get anything, because there is no Korban Pesach. At the table of the Beis Halevi, he wouldn't be left out of anything. There is no Korban Pesach.
So you could participate in everything. The only thing is what we eat, the afikoman, is zecher to the Korban Pesach. Now it's a question whether
it's not the Korban Pesach.
Not as Korban Pesach, but I don't think he would be forbidden to eat it. But so, I mean, they wouldn't tell him don't. They wouldn't tell him don't eat it.
I asked this question about uncircumcised people, and they said we don't have the Korban Pesach.
So they could eat any matzah, right? It's actually a question. The last matzah, the matzah of afikoman, whether it's to remember the Korban Pesach or to remember the matzah that was eaten with the Pesach. Okay, that's right. Okay, there's interesting, very interesting Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Bo, and it could be the Beis Halevi gave this drasha by Parshas Parah because it talks about Parah, but this is the springboard to understanding this Medrash, to understanding this concept that the Beis Halevi wants to bring out to a theme over here in this whole shir, and that is the Medrash says like this. It says the lashon chuka by Korban Pesach, and the pasuk says zayis chukas ha-pasach, and para aduma. What parsha do we lay in for Parshas Para? It's Parshas Chukas, right? And the beginning, the parsha of Para aduma starts with the same language, chukas, zayis chukas ha-Torah. This is the law, statutes of the Torah. So we find the connection in the language of chukas ha-pasach and chukas ha-Torah. Now, the Medrash goes on to say that Lamed, we learn from here, sheshneim shkulim, that they're both equal in this aspect. By one it says chukas ha-pasach, one it says zayis chukas ha-Torah. So says the Medrash. So I don't know which one's greater. Now it gives a mashal. The mashal is to two noble women that are walking, and one of them, they look both equally noble, equally important. From the way they walk, from the way they're dressed, you can't tell who is more important than the other. So how do you know? The one who her friend walks her home, and then she continues walking home by herself. So the one who's dropped off first is the one who's more important. She gets escorted home. The next one, she goes home and she walks home by herself. So what's the nimshal? The nimshal is that what comes first, the para aduma comes first. Because before we bring the Korban Pesach, we bring the para aduma. We have the para that in order to eat from the Korban Pesach, we have to take from the ashes of the burnt para aduma, and we sprinkle it on the person who's tamei, and then he could eat from the Pesach. So you see, the para is greater. Now that's the medrash. Question is, first of all, what is actually the connection? This is very nice. What does the muscle of somebody walking home have to really do with the para aduma here being something that enables a person to eat Korban Pesach? What does one have to do with the other? Additionally, the Medrash, this Beis Halevi says this point, I guess there's a methodology in understanding Medrash. He said the Medrash is bothered by something on this pasuk, and because of that is giving this mashal, which is going to help us understand. In other words, when you would read this Pesach, you and I, we would not be bothered. What's greater? What's more important? Is it the Karban Pesach offering? Is it the Paraduma offering? And now we're going to show that it's the Paraduma offering. Okay, so if you could put 2 and 2 together, which he doesn't do till the end of the piece, the Beis Halevi is going to see in here that the idea that we started off with of the Torah introducing Zayis Chukas HaPesach with what is the law that the Torah tells us in this pasuk is called Ben Nechar Lo Yochabo, that this Ben Nechar, this person who's estranged from his Father in heaven, that doesn't keep the mitzvos, he is can't eat it.
Usually not Jewish.
It does, yeah. But here it means, Rashi says it includes both. Even though the Gemara speaks about, Rashi brings from the Gemara, that it means Misha Nesnachu Maisav of Shavashamayim.
Yeah, it has to be, because he's giving his other kids, if he's a guy, his other kids are going. If he's giving the other kids and not him, then he can't literally mean the Necher over here.
Okay. Here, there's a famous story that the Gemara in Gittin, it's one of the Gemaras, I think it comes up Tisha B'Av time, of a fellow who was a Gentile, and he wanted to trick the Jews and eat from the Karban Pesach, and who was the one who caught him? He lived in Tzivin. Anyone remember? Okay, maybe I'll remember. But anyway, the rabbi who caught him, this guy came back. He came back to where he lived, and he said that I tricked the Jews. I got from the Karban Pesach. So he said, really? You didn't get from the tail? You didn't get from the tail. So he said, what's the tail? He said, that's the fattiest, juiciest part. That's the most tasty. So he said, why didn't they give me? He said, you have to go back and ask them for that. So the next time he went back and he asked, and they knew that was a part that was non-kosher. You couldn't eat that part. So he said, who told you to ask for that? So it was Rav Yehuda ben Beseira. Okay, Rav Yehuda ben Beseira. So they said, they took this guy. They knew that they couldn't give him the Karban Pesach, and they praised Rav Yehuda ben Beseira that even though he was in a tzivin, but his net, so to speak, his influence, what he was able to achieve was all the way in Yerushalayim. He was able to. So anyway, it was something that obviously this Gentile didn't like to be left out of. He thought, the Jews won't let me participate, I'm going to get in. So, but anyway, so again, the Medrash speaks about what's more important, Paraduma, Karban Pesach, and gives this mashal, and the one that comes down on top is the Paraduma being more important. We have to understand what's the correlation between the two. Why is it Paraduma is more important?
If the child was the son of an Eved Kanani, what would his status be?
That's a good question. I think that he would also be an Eved Kanani, and Avadim were, if they had a bris milah, I believe were allowed to eat in the Karban Pesach. Yes, so he would be, in other words, he's partially Jewish. He's a kind of a ger, a chayav in mitzvahs like an isha, and he would be, because the pasuk says, "Kol Eved Ish Miknas Kasef Umalta Az Yochabai," then he has to have a bris milah, and later the pasuk says. Okay, I can't find it here in this paragraph, but one of the psukim in the parasha is talking specifically about giving a bris milah to the son of an Eved Kanani so that he could also eat from the Karban Pesach. Not only that, you weren't allowed to eat from it either until you gave him a bris milah. And it's everyone who you were responsible for their bris milah needed to have that bris milah before the master was able to eat from the Karban Pesach.
When it says that the paraduma is more important in which sense?
Okay, we're gonna get to that.
Only because the paraduma is there to make those who are tomei tohar which means that if nobody was Tomei, then there's no reason for the
Right.
Paraduma.
In theory, you could have a year where there's no Paraduma if nobody
Right.
died that year, I guess.
No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
in other words, if somebody's not Tomei,
Or if somebody wasn't Tameh, so he
Right.
would only do the Karban Pesach. Somebody who remained pure would only do
that
the Karban
means-
Pesach.
That means it seems to me that the Karban Pesach is more important, because
Okay.
because the Paraduma is only there to be enabled to somebody to eat the...
Yeah, I hear you. Now, that's a good question. What would it was mentioned before? What would a share be without questions? Can you imagine a share without questions? Okay. Now there's a Haftarah, Parshas Para, that we had this past Shabbos, and if you're familiar with it, I don't know if I could find it here. Okay. The Haftarah speaks about what seems very similar to what goes on in the Paraduma with the sprinkling of the water. What they would do is they would mix the ashes with water from a spring, and it was carried in a special way that couldn't become tamei, and then it was sprinkled. So that brought a person to become tar. Now that I don't know if I'm finding it here. Probably more efficient to look in the index, right?
A bit that'd be easy.
Okay. I think we're getting there. Parshas Para. Okay. So it speaks about in the end of days, in the Geula, in the end of days. So it says that Hashem calls the people that became Tamei, and with their avodah zaras and so on, with their sins, and Hashem says to them that He's going to bring them out, and He's going to be Mekadesh His name, sanctify His name, and He says, I'm going to bring you all to the land, to Eretz Yisrael, my land, and He says like this: "V'zarakti aleichem mayim tehorim u'tahartem mikoltem v'seichem mikol gilulechem atar eschem." Some of you are familiar with this from the Slichos. We say this: I'll sprinkle on you pure waters, mayim tehorim, and you'll become tar. And I'll purify you from all of your abominations, from the avodah zaras. I'll purify you. Okay, I'll give you a new heart and a new spirit. Okay, now the Beis Levi, basically he brings out that the Paraduma very much is related to the Geula Hasida. In other words, what goes on, the rules and the observances that you have by the Paraduma actually connect to what Hashem's going to do in the end of days to purify the Jewish people. Okay, so everything's getting switched for me. I use two different volumes so that we can switch different sides. But the para is linked again. So the Paraduma is linked to what's going to save us from the Golus, from the future exile, from at the end of days. The Pesach, he got us out of Golus Mitzrayim. That's what the Beis Levi says is the commonality between these two karbanos. The Karban Pesach got us out of Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and He wanted to give us a merit with which to be redeemed. He gave us the blood of the Pesach and the Milah, and we slaughtered the avodah zara of the Egyptians, and we showed our commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and became a people through Karban Pesach. Karban Pesach got us out of Mitzrayim. Paraduma gets us out of the Golus in the end of days. Okay. Listen to this Medrash. The Medrash says, V'asa v'ishtar. I'm skipping parts of it. So it says that it's Vasaf Ishtar, that a pure man comes and gathers the ashes. That refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Ish, like we see Ish Melchama and Az Yashir. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Tahar, because it says Tahar Einayim, the Pasuk in Chavakuk. Then the Pasuk says that he collects the Ephra Parah. This refers to what are these ashes, the ashes of the Parah. The Medrash says that refers to all of the exiles of Yerushalayim are going to be gathered and brought in. Then it says he brings them to a place, to Michutz HaMachane, to a Makam Tahar. What's this Makam Tahar, this pure place where all the ashes are going to be gathered up and brought to? This is Yerushalayim. So we see that the drasha, the medrash of this entire parsha Paraduma, is referring to the Galiyos of the Gula Achrona. Okay, that's what we see. So there is a connection between Paraduma and Korban Pesach. Okay, now I'm going to skip a couple of parts of it. I hope to come back to it. Now, the question that's facing the medrash and that's facing us is when the Jewish people left in Mitzrayim, the calculation is a bit blurry of how things work out when they left Mitzrayim. The Pasuk says they left after 430 years. Pasuk says, Mikech Shloshim v'Arba Mea Shana, V'Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh Yatzuk Al Tuvas Hashem Eretz Mitzrayim. So, other place says 400 years, 210 years. The question is how to calculate. Okay. Now, Rashi says that from the time that Yitzchak was born until now was 400 years, and from the 430 years is from the Bris Bein of Yisarim. And then Rashi makes a calculation why it couldn't be 430 years in Mitzrayim alone. It couldn't be. They definitely weren't in. You calculate the generations, and Moshe Rabbeinu left, and his father and his mother, and who went down. You see that it wasn't. It's not 430 years. Okay. So, what is it? So there's a question to two midrashim. One midrash says that it's okay. It's 430 years. 430 years started from the Bris Bein of Yisarim. 400 years started from Yitzchak. Now the time is up. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes Jewish people out. Another medrash that says.
What's the relationship? It doesn't make sense.
The relationship.
What is the? It's not God. It's at Abraham's dream.
Okay. So what Rashi says is that it doesn't fully explain this, but what Rashi says is that it says ki ger yeh zaracha. So Avram never. In other words, like there was a machlokas in Avram and Lot and so on, but that whether the land belongs to Avram yet, the land wasn't going to be his until the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim. So actually, all the years that Avram Avinu and Yitzchak Avinu and Yaakov Avinu were in Eretz Yisrael, they were called sojourning. They weren't actually at home, so to speak. They weren't at home because it was a land that was promised to them to give to their children.
But even if you use that logic, why should it be at the basement of Sarim? Could have been 2 days before, 4 years Lechacha. I mean, it begins with Lechacha in a sense.
Yeah, but the time that it was said was at Bris Bein of Yisarim. In other words, the prophecy that there's going to be an exile and it's going to be 430 years was from today.
It's not going to be. It's actually you're in it now. Is what you're saying.
You're saying it's already.
And that wasn't the prophecy. The prophecy is it'll happen in the future, not at this moment.
Right, but the part of the calculation will begin from now. I like your question. You're asking that if nothing changed before Bris Bein of Yisarim and after Bris Bein of Yisarim, Avram's in a place where it didn't belong to him, so he's not at home. So why is now is the beginning of the exile, so to speak, from then.
Particularly when you talk about the exile in the future.
Right. Of course, the part of the Avodim, the Inu Isam, right, that they're going to be enslaved, and they're going to be hurt and tortured, this didn't begin yet. That's for sure. That's going to be in the future. Okay. Now
so the Golos at the end is bigger than the Golos of Mitzrayim. That's why the Paraduma is bigger than the Golos.
Okay, so that's what we're getting to. The Golos, the future Geula, is somehow right, is greater than the Galus, than the Gula of Mitzrayim, and the Paraduma being linked to getting us out of this long Galus that we're in. That Paraduma, very good, is greater. So, getting to that point, so the Beis Levi says that according to one medrash, actually, the Bnei Israel were taken out early. In other words, the time wasn't up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that I'm taking you out now, and it brings a pasuk in Shir Shirim. The pasuk says, this is brought in the Medrash on the pasuk of V'cheresh Elochem. Okay, so the pasuk in Shir Shirim says, Kol Daidi, it's the voice of my beloved. He knows that ba, it's coming, like it's coming to come get me. Midaleg al harim is skipping and jumping on the mountains. So what's jumping? Jumping means like not going in a straight line, right? You're skipping. So according to this medrash, what it's referring to is that when Moshe came and said that in this month you're going to be redeemed in the month of Nisan, the Jewish people said to him, didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Abraham Avinu that we're going to be enslaved for 400 years? We only have 210. We're counting. We're counting. We know it's only 210. So Moshe said to them, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to redeem you, he doesn't look at the calculation. He doesn't look the number of years. He's coming. He's jumping. He's medalig al harim. And the kitzim and the cheshbainos, he's skipping them. Okay. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to this, took them out before this time. So now, what does that have to do with us? There's a reason why I took them out before the time. Is a famous thing from the Arizal, right? And Beis Levi brings this, that the Bnei Israel sunk to the lowest levels possible, almost to the point of no return. Now let's explain that a little bit more. This is how the Beis Levi explains it. It says, so in other words, if they were going to reach that point of no return, so then they wouldn't have been able to be redeemed. And that would have been it. Forever, basically. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out of Mitzrayim at this time for the future, that the Jewish people could have a survival for the future. In other words, it wasn't time for this Geula yet. But this Geula came now because there's going to be a Geula HaSida. There's going to be a continuity to the Jewish people, and in order to keep that, to hold on to that, they needed to be taken out now. Why did that have to be? So it says in Haggadah of Pesach, this is a famous line of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ilu la yahaitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu es abayseinu mi Mitzrayim. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not have taken us out of Mitzrayim, Harei Anu, Anachnu, Ubaneinu, Ubnei Baneinu, Mishubadim, we would be enslaved. Ayinu l'parabim Mitzrayim. So we would be enslaved. So the question is, why would we still be enslaved? Maybe eventually we would have gotten out. So based on the Arizal, the idea is that no, it was like now or never. If they wouldn't have been taken out soon, then it wouldn't have been possible to do it later. So the reason is, the Beis Levi explains, is because like this Mem Teshar Tumah, but the idea is that in order for us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers the promise that He gave to our Avos, to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And in order for a Jew to be connected to his forefathers, to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, he has to have some resemblance, something, somehow, some connection. In other words, just being biologically a descendant of them wouldn't be enough. Like we find by Yishmael, we find by Esau. No, only by Yitzchak. Just biologically being a child, being descended from them, wouldn't have been enough that they would still be considered connected to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. If they would to be so sunk in the tumah that the Egyptian society had caused them to sin and to bring them down so low.
They had no choice. If he wanted to keep the promise and made the Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they had to take the Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim. The method and the time frame is something else, but he really had no choice.
Not really.
Why?
Because the bris would be voided if there was no Bnei Israel. that would void the bris.
You're
only responsible to take them out if it's too far to stay bris.
Interesting. Or maybe there would have been a third option to only take out those who were still.
No, I'm saying if there were none, then the bris would be voided.
No,
Yes,
if they went to none, sorry, it'd still be.
So he's saying if they would have went further, it would have been so sunk into them that they wouldn't even be called Zera Avram anymore. They wouldn't. They would be. They would be so sunk in the tumah
that statement
that
That he couldn't let it be voided.
exactly it had to be fulfilled.
It's a good point.
So anyway, in order for there to be room for this promise that your children are going to be in the land that doesn't belong to them, they're going to go out with great wealth, right? And this was a promise that Hashem made that was to redeem the children of Abram, but not to somebody who's not called the children of Abram, like Esav and Yishmael. So if they would have sunk so low that they lost any resemblance, that the tumah went so deep, then it would have been it. So Kadosh Baruch Hu saved them before that. And how did He save them? He gave them mitzvahs from Pesach, Milah, and then ultimately they accepted the Torah. And this was all not just something in and of itself, because this wasn't the end Geula. This was the Geula that was to be able to, the Jewish people shouldn't be lost. They should be able to be redeemed. But what's even going to overshadow this Geula is the Geula that's going to be the end-all Geula. The Geula that's going to put away all the tzaros and all the difficulties and all the galiyos that's going to be the Geula Asida. We're not just going to be taken out of Mitzrayim and out of the tomb of Mitzrayim and brought into a more healthy spiritual place where we could continue to exist, where we're actually going to be settled in Eretz Yisrael, that we're not going to be sent into exile again, and that's even greater. So now, getting back to the two women who are walking, and they're both royal women. They're both look very regal. It's a question which one is even greater. And now the one that's escorted to her home, that's the one who's greater. The one that keeps walking by herself, she isn't as important because she was there to escort the one who was greater, and then she walks back on her own. So now, in a simple level, the Para Aduma is something that helps us get to the Korban Pesach, because the Para Aduma comes first before we bring Korban Pesach. We become purified. But in another sense, the Beis Halevi is saying here that really which one comes out being more important, the Para Aduma, because the Pesach is actually the one that gets us to the Para Aduma. In other words, let's look at it from this perspective. If not for the Korban Pesach, we never would have been able to have the Jewish continuity, the survival, that we could have held on to that Pintel Yid, that Kedusha inside of us, that we would be able to have a Geula Asida. So the Pesach is what's bringing us to the point where we could get redeemed early. It's not really the time yet for the Egyptian redemption. According to one explanation the Beis Halevi brings, they even would have to make up for that time of the Egyptian exile later on in the future, because they only had 210 years under their belt, and they still had 190 years to pay for it.
There was no Para Aduma for the first Pesach.
There was no Para Aduma for the first Pesach. Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. For the second Pesach, right? For the second Pesach,
That's
what?
why you have Pesach Sheni.
Am I right? For the second
No,
Pesach?
I'm talking about the first Pesach was in Mitzrayim.
Right.
There was no Para Aduma.
But that's why Pesach Sheni was created, so people who couldn't participate in
it was the next year.
In the
right?
second
the
Pesach.
next
Right.
Right, in the Midbar.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So the Korban Pesach brings
Right.
about.
They weren't given that mitzvah yet.
Korban Pesach seems to be more important. If not for the Korban Pesach, there would be no.
But in other words, if something is just a means to an end, but if something's a means to an end, so the one that's more important is the one that's the end. Something is a means to an end, so the one that's just escorting the other one to her home, so the one who's escorting is just the means, is the one who services
I'm not
the other
comfortable
one.
with that
So
analogy.
here, the Pesach
I'm not comfortable with the analogy of the two women. I'm not very comfortable. And I'll give you a reason why. You have a prostitute whose son becomes a gadol ador, becomes what's name, right? So they walk on the street. Who's the greater person who people recognize is the son. But as a kibbutz avvaim, he's going to escort his father home. Okay.
Right.
So,
Okay.
So it's not necessarily
okay, but he's respecting his father because there is something about his father.
Yeah, but
we're not saying that the first one is a bigger tzaddikus than the next one. That's not what we're saying.
It's
just saying.
Question of in other words, if people would come here to give honor, who would they honor? I don't think they honor his father, but they come to honor him, the son.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so the one that they honor, that's the one. It's not necessarily the grand scale, but there is something. The reason that they honor is because there's certain chashivas, certain importance to the one that they honor. So just to clarify, so we're saying that the Jewish people were brought out of Mitzrayim early, so that they could continue to hold on to the kedusha, and that the Karban Pesach brought them to there, and that was something which is going to bring a geula, but it's not the end all geula yet. It's going to bring them to the geula of the para, and that and the para being the one who's going to the para is going to be brought home, so to speak, through the Karban Pesach. And what's the home of the para? The Yerushalayim in the Geula. See, the Pesach is going to get us the Pesach is going to bring us to the Geula Hasidah. And it just reminds me of something. I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but I think I mentioned this last year, that this is our Pi Kabbalah. The Ramchal says that the Karban Pesach, the Pesach Seder, and the Karban Pesach every year brings us through observing the Karban Pesach, that's bringing us closer and closer and closer to the Geula. In other words, this is something which he gives a mashal to a very big tree, and the tree is partially chopped, and every Pesach you take like another chop at the tree, and it gets closer and closer to being knocked down, to the whole galus being taken away. Every Pesach brings us one step closer. So I want to end off with just a quick thought, and then we'll end. And the idea is like this: that the idea of Zais Chukas HaPasach. I can't end with this because I can't say it. Okay, I have to end off what I started talking about. I started talking about the Ben Rasha, right, and the Ben Nechar, and not being able to eat from the Karban Pesach. And why is that? Okay, so let's wrap that up. So the reason is because this is the Beis Levi says. The reason is because this person, even though he was in Mitzrayim, and he did come out of Mitzrayim, and his father's, and the reason why he's here today is because he came out of Mitzrayim, but the Karban Pesach is not the end all goal here. The goal is the Geula Shlema that comes in the future. So the final redemption. So is this person Shayach? Is he included in the final redemption? If he's not, then he can't partake in the Karban Pesach. If he's not included in the final redemption, if he's not part of this destiny of the Jewish people, because he's distanced himself, and he decided that he doesn't believe, and he's not becoming an Eved Hashem, so he's not part of that destiny. If he's not part of that destiny, he could keep other mitzvahs. And we hope he comes back. We hope he does tshuva, and we'll pray for him to return. But he can't partake of the Karban Pesach, because the Karban Pesach is for people who are part of the future Geula. And if he's not part of it, he can't partake. And that's basically what we tell this son when he says, "What's going on?" The Ben Rasha. He says, "You're eating Karban Pesach. What is this to you? Why to you and not to me?" Because he's not getting a part. So he's saying, "What is it to you? What are you doing this? And I don't get to be part of it." And we say to him, "Yes, because this is the Chukas HaPesach. that this is something that is for people who the Geula was for them in order to be taken out at that time to have the future redemption. But it wasn't just because that time, at that moment. It was because somebody being a part of the future destiny of the Jewish people. But he wouldn't be, because he's taken himself out of that. So therefore, that's why he can't have the Korban Pesach. We should be Zoche, that all of Klal Yisrael should be Chayzer B'Tshuva. We should have the Korban Pesach very soon in our days, and the Kapara Aduma to purify all of us, and the Kula Shem Hervim Yaminu.